Untitled episode of the Business Squad's Happy Hour.
I thought it was happy hour with the squad.
Happy hour with the squad.
You know,
I think it's happy hour with the business squad, isn't it?
We got problems. Maybe we should start over.
All right.
I think we need to fire the marketing team, and it seems I'm the only one that does the marketing. I readily resign my position. It's all yours,
Okay.
and have it. Well, so folks, I hope your week's been good. I'm going to go around usually like we do and do our introductions. So start out with my first man to the left here.
All right. Is that
Was,
Ben
I
to the
think
first?
you.
You're pointing to me. Okay.
Sorry.
John Szymanski with Kokopelli Financial and a proud member of the business squad. And it's off to a stellar start. But my role as the benefits guy is to help our clients with their health, life, disability, insurance needs, and excited to help and eager to meet new people. So come see us. Thank you.
I'm Ben Van Gelder, and I'm the legal eagle, the attorney over here in the business squad. And my background is in healthcare law, and a lot of healthcare law is everything that a regular business owner has to deal with on top of regulations. So I've got
With a little
experience
HIPAA mixed in.
with HIPAA. Oh, that's just scratching the surface. So I do compliance and transactional business advising.
And my name's James Lewis, and I'm the financial guru here at the squad. And my job is to help you make sure that your money properly behaves. Because money can be naughty. And we've got to get it in straight order right away. But in all seriousness, though, if it deals with your dollar from the point of planning it to the way you're going to spend it and using it as efficiently as possible, that's my role here, is to make sure that we get that done as best we can.
I don't think money's naughty. I think taking advantage of money is what happens. So
We might be getting into that a little bit later on in the
protect
show.
money.
I am the guardian of money. It should be my new
guardian.
title. The protector. Night Regent. I can give myself a bunch of this, right? Supreme? Okay.
I am James Lippens of my business is called Payroll Vault. I'm the payroll specialist within the group. We do cloud-based payroll solutions for small and medium-sized businesses. And I like to, I also have a degree in accounting, so I like to also take the financial side with my friend James here. But,
Money in the house. What?
Yeah, you know, I like to pay your employees and make sure your taxes are in order.
So the numbers are covered over there.
important.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's important.
It's important.
Because I won't help you with that at all.
Okay.
Somebody's got to do it.
Oh, and our newest addition, our Blue Yeti.
That's right. And we can say hi to the Yeti.
Hi, Yeti.
So we want feedback. How does it sound? So
We're convinced that it will make a difference, but maybe it'll make none, and we've spent all this money for nothing, and we put a huge phallic symbol in the middle of our room.
okay.
So feedback on the fallacy.
That's right. Exactly.
That's excellent.
Is that the word of the day?
That is no.
We won't be drinking much.
All right.
Yeti is the word of the day. We'll use
Yeti.
Yeti.
All
I
right.
think Yeti's fun.
That's
Yeah, let's use
okay.
Yeti as the word of the day.
Experimental.
So our first segment, for those of you that are new to the show, is called The Pulse. And the idea with The Pulse is we follow some current trends and topics, and we kind of give our input relative to who we are and what we do. And one of the most recent things that's going on right now that's on everybody's lips, actually, is the death of the Supreme Court Justice. So
Absolutely.
I think, everyone's got opinions, but I think we should segue it first.
I
of
think
course.
I want a legal opinion.
Right, I was going to say, I think we should
Legal
let
opinion?
Maybe,
yeah, let the eagle speak up.
Yeah.
Well,
set,
you get
set
first
the
crack.
world straight.
Right.
Yeah, first crack
well,
at the
I don't
time.
know. I mean, just from a personal perspective, right? I always thought Antonin Scalia got a little bit of a bad rap out there in the media. I had to read a lot of legal opinions in law school.
No
Legal
way.
opinions
Yeah.
are awful.
I bet.
Right? They're
Yeah.
terrible. But I actually enjoyed reading Scalia's opinions. I thought he was very entertaining. And, I got to respect a little bit. He had some ridiculous positions, but they were because he was a strict constitutionalist.
That's very
and
true.
when he had an opinion that was out there, yeah, maybe the final thing was ridiculous, but you could trace his logic, you could read his opinion and do that. And there's justices on the Supreme Court right now that I think write awful opinions. And maybe they get the right answer, but they pretty clearly just say, well, you know what? We think this is the right answer, so we're going to make it work. And
Sure.
both positions have merit. I'm not criticizing either one, but I just think people said he was ridiculous and silly, and I think he was a brilliant man. I think he was a great writer.
It's opposition, but You know what was it Ruth Bader Ginsburg commented about him that she didn't agree with most anything that he put out, but she was very entertained in doing it. So,
that's true.
and I didn't spend any time reading his positions, but
Lucky you.
but you know, that's the feedback I get, is that he was quite a wit, and he will be missed, you know. But now, what does that do to the balance of the court?
Well, and
who knows? That's a good question.
I know for me, being the hardcore libertarian type, I would tell you that for a balance of the law, there really shouldn't even be worrying. Like, you shouldn't be worrying about balance of the law. Everything should already rule. The Supreme Court justice's job is to rule to the letter of the law. There shouldn't be a balance.
Sure. Yeah.
It should be, the law says go to jail at X. Well, at X, I go to jail. That's it. End of discussion.
Well, if that was the case, why we wouldn't need a Supreme Court? But it's their job to interpret it, right?
My Constitution, you say, I had a whole class on constitutional law, right? And you might think that the Constitution's been around, over 200 years, 250 years, somewhere in there?
Yep.
And it's like, okay, straightforward. It is a mess. Constitutional law is a mess. It's really confusing. Yeah. It's really complicated. And honestly, there are
open to interpretation.
2,327 words only can be made complicated by an army of lawyers, generation after generation.
I'll tell you what.
2,000. It's the shortest document ever written with the most concise clarity.
It was written by people 200 years ago, and the world's totally different. Healthcare is totally different.
Is it? I think our forefathers had tremendous insight, didn't they?
Well, they had insight, but how could they talk? I mean, there was no healthcare system 200 years ago.
Yeah.
So the Constitution doesn't say anything about healthcare, right? And so that's when you got to say, all right, well, what does this really mean about healthcare?
Our forefathers, believe it or not, and fair or not, they owned slaves. I mean, that's not constitutionally legal anymore.
Right.
So, things change over time, and you have conservatives,
women couldn't vote,
and more liberal people that make changes. Yeah, women couldn't vote. What is it?
So that was an amendment to our Constitution.
Some minorities were counted as 1/8 of a person. I mean, these are bad things that were changed by constitutional law changes as we go forward. And it's important that we put the right people in place to make the right decisions.
Right.
But the slippery slope gets created when the time that you allow for changes like that to just happen, right? So if you say, it's a living document, we'll just roll with it, and as time moves along, we'll mold the clay and we'll make it whatever we need to make it.
And Scalia was the opposition to that. It was
sure. That's correct.
So here's a good example, right? So the Civil Rights Act that passed, all these laws against discrimination, was passed because the Supreme Court found that racism affects interstate commerce. Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit of a tenuous, yes, it does impact state commerce. It's a little tenuous. So I think what James is suggesting is that's not a good way to do it. Right. The better way to do it would be to pass a constitutional amendment that says discrimination is not okay.
Much more.
I would totally agree with that.
It would make it a lot better, right? Because there's a lot of people
it's very clean.
If you're in state, if you're local, you don't touch anything then you can be discriminatory.
Another good question, though. Realistically, and the legal guy probably knows this, when was the last time we actually passed a constitutional amendment?
A long time ago. Well, I think there was one in the 90s about something minor.
Okay.
It takes ratification of all the states to actually
do it.
So you get all the governors that got to throw in and say, we're in.
It was designed that way to make it very difficult to make changes.
But it wouldn't be so crazy to think of a constitutional amendment if that's the way we did it instead of waiting for the Supreme. If the Supreme Court hadn't addressed the Civil Rights Act, I think we probably would have done an amendment on it.
Probably, so but it's important that you have checks and balances on different sections of government. So you have the legislative branch that can make a constitutional amendment. You have the presidential branch that can make a what's the dirty word they're calling it nowadays? Executive decisions.
Right.
Executive order.
Executive order. Okay, that's the dirty word for it, right?
It's got a bad rap right now.
Sure, it has a bad rap right now. And then you have the legislative branch that, basically goes back and looks over all these things and says, no,
right.
You should do that. So I think that it's important to appoint someone to the court that's actually fair and balanced in the mid.
So Fox News.
No, I mean, I would hate to see someone elected to the court
Yeah,
that was
you're
so
right.
conservative they go and overrule abortion rules and things like that. I mean, personally, I feel that women should have, no matter what you personally think about those things, women should have the right to make their own opinion about their bodies.
Well, here's the thing that I just read was to get prepared
I
for
hate to
this.
get crazy like
You know,
that.
was that if there's a deadlock in the Supreme Court, then it's like it never went to the Supreme Court and it defaults to the last
Sure.
ruling that happened.
So the important thing
Yeah.
is
And
that we
there's-
don't have an even number of people on the Supreme Court, and that's what we're going to have if we don't get
Well, that's what
someone
we're looking at right now. So there's an immigration,
All kinds of stuff,
up
yeah.
there to be considered, and that has something to do with Texas, and I can't quote all this stuff. But there's also something to do with abortion that has something to do through the Fifth Circuit Court, I
Right.
think, that could allow several states to have kind of free reign to decide abortion.
Well, the way that it would work,
Which
though,
is it could be a problem.
it's not actually the last ruling, right? So the country's divided into circuits, right? And there's not, I should know how many circuits there are. It's like 11 or 13 or something circuits. And each circuit court makes a decision. And if circuit courts disagree, the Supreme Court decides. But if right now we're in a situation where one circuit court could say one thing about abortion and another circuit court could say another
Right.
thing about abortion, and that
They're
those-
conflicting, so it's
they're
illegal
conflicting,
and legal
exactly,
at the same time.
but they're both binding and powerful in those circuits, right?
Sure.
And none of the other circuits is done. So
Right, so that
You
the
can't
one that I
have
was
it either.
referring to was in the Fifth or something, and
Right.
it's Texas, Arkansas,
right,
and but it would open the door in those states
Right.
for those
For
states to.
changes. Sure, and I think the reality of what you'll see is that the Supreme Court probably won't end up taking on really many cases at all until they
Right.
get that extra seat appointed
Right.
because they don't want to be in
So
the place of
I
having a split decision.
Right.
Business-wise, it could mean a lot for different people, right?
my 10th Amendment is breaking out. It has
Okay.
to speak. Those powers not designated to the federal court are left to be reserved to the state governments to be ruled by them. Abortion is one of the powers not designated within the federal.
but it's already been ruled on in federal court.
I
It's
get
already
it.
been decided.
My point is, you're talking about pulling the cork out of it, and I don't go on this whole abortion thing because I personally believe it's personal choice. It's your personal body. Government has no business in it. That's a whole other story. But it gets back down to states have rights just like people, and actually, and anything that is not enumerated amongst the 10 powers given to by the Constitution falls to the state. Period. End of discussion. We've went long down a road. We've
Oh,
ignored
yeah,
that with
that's-
blatant disregard. We put all.
It doesn't
It's like we
exist
loaded up a hot
anymore.
rod,
It's just like
tinted
it
out the
doesn't-
windows, and slammed the gas down the road.
Yeah, the
Blinded.
Affordable Care Act ruling was kind of the last act that said the 10th Amendment is, or the 10th, it doesn't apply.
But vice versa.
basically.
Colorado said, up your sideways, federal government. We're going to make pot as legal as we can make it. And you're going to do squat. Come start a fight. And the feds are like, will.
They will. They would win.
Yeah, I
went
don't
to
know.
jail,
They
went
did.
to the
There's
Supreme
so
Court.
much
Well, that's
money-
what
there's
they're
so
doing,
much
but you know what? Okay,
administration
so
is
here's the
not
thing.
done.
They're like, for that specific instance,
Yeah.
they're like, holy shit, there's so much tax revenue we're going to get.
I know,
Well,
and
they're
they're gonna
realizing
go,
that's
not
out.
even
we're gonna
tax
pave all our roads in gold now, so the whole country's
Right.
gonna follow suit
But it's
eventually.
only because the
'Cause that could
president
pay for
has
healthcare, for
decided
God's
not
sakes.
to intervene. If Obama said, nope, sorry, it's illegal, and they sent people in, arrested them, and they got arrested in
Absolutely.
federal court, they are going to jail. It's felonies. Nothing Colorado can do about it.
Well, yeah.
Well,
So
not
it's all
true.
discretion.
Not true because so they would have to go in and pull those people out at gunpoint out of the state, like straight up Gestapo kidnapping. Because otherwise they'd put them in the state prison, the state facility, and the state would say,
Have a
"Hold
nice
on,
day.
wait, they're in the car. All right, and out you go." And they
So
don't
for
walk
example,
right
in
over.
already
Michigan,
happened.
we
It's
have
like- yeah.
we have medical marijuana legalization.
Sure.
If the FBI or if the
It happened right here in the
DEA were to
neighborhood.
come
Yeah.
to a local dispensary
Yeah.
here, they'd say you're breaking the law. We're taking all your money, which
Yeah.
they do a lot, by the way,
Mhm.
in the state. And if they
They-
were to go far as to say we're going to arrest you, they take you down to Milan and put you in the federal
Yeah.
prison.
Well, that
I
just
mean,
Yeah, I
it's
know
been,
that,
it's
but-
been resolved in other previous like felony and federal stuff. Like this is not a unique thing. Like it's pretty much well established. Federal government gets to decide what drugs are legal and illegal.
No, I understand that, but what it comes back to enforcement and states' rights again, right? So,
Right.
So it's not a federal dictated power by the Constitution to regulate if you use drugs or not. Prohibition proved that it wasn't such because they tried to do that and ended up with all these pockets of rebellion. It's the whole reason they said, okay, this whole trying to regulate this isn't such a good deal. 80s came. Well, actually, technically, it's driven historically with Nixon and all that stuff. But the war on drugs began with epic fail.
It was a
Proven it.
classification of marijuana as a what? A class?
Well, and there's reasons that they've done that, because if you go back to the money is that it's direct competition to the pharmaceutical industry, and I can't patent the cannabis plant, and I can't protect it and trademark it and make
The
it my
interesting thing is
my
There's
magic
also, there's
pot.
also
the paper
problems with
industry,
that medical
you know,
evidence
but-
behind it actually being effective.
Well,
there's no solid 100. I mean,
Well, but
it's
you have
become
to get-
50-50, but
Being what was that statement again?
there's just no there's no study that has conclusively said one way
part
or
of the
the
reason
other
for that is
how
that
it
it's
works.
really
It's
hard
just
to
like-
do a study on
Right.
an illegal drug.
Right.
But,
Right,
Well,
right.
part of that is because a lot of it relates
That's
to pain management, right? And pain management is subjective. And it's
Subjective.
really hard to say,
Absolutely.
like, do you feel better? Like, scale of 1 to 10. Do you feel better? Well, if you smoke a little pot, yeah, you always feel better, right? Does that mean that
But
it
it's given,
works? Who
but
knows?
they show how it gives tremendous relief to people that they can't get it
Absolutely.
anywhere else. So
Sure.
And it's much less addictive than opiates. But none of this is business.
No, right? Hey, we're gonna go on.
no, but it could be big business.
Oh, it could
Well,
be. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a
Yeah.
whole
I
other
mean,
story. And we'll save that for another week. You can tune in for that when we talk about pot as a new business in Michigan, because it's coming. It's to the ballot in a couple months.
I will say
Before.
one last thing. I think this is going to get where this is not. I mean, what Mitch McConnell saying and all that. This is not going to be like the Supreme Court doesn't do anything for 2 years, right? There's a lot of cases that. I mean, you'd be surprised, but there's a lot of cases where Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Antonin Scalia were on the same side.
Oh, sure.
There's a lot of cases where the 8 people will not. Have
So
to worry about
are they
it.
going to
Yeah,
be able
they
to
will
go
take-
and decide?
So-
well, we can agree on this one, so let's move it
Yep.
through.
Yeah,
that's
so you're
and then they
looking
can
at-
say
gonna do.
they're only going to take cases they know they can get a majority decision on.
Yep.
They're not going to take anything controversial.
Right.
Only things they can get clear cut. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. No.
Progress will be made.
Yeah.
It's not like the Supreme Court.
So the stuff that's already kind of on their docket is just going to they're just going to.
Well, they'll cherry pick through it.
There's
That's
no
what they'll do.
requarement as to when they have to issue an opinion.
No.
They can wait 2
They're
years.
the
to
Supreme
issue
Court.
An opinion. Yeah, who's going to stop them?
Right? Who's gonna tell them no? Right?
Well, I'll tell you what this is going to be, though. It's going to be a big issue in the election coming up. They're going to make a huge deal about this.
It's going to be resolved by then.
Hopefully, it's resolved by that.
I would be shocked if it's
Unfairly or not, if no one is appointed and someone is, if someone's selected and not appointed by
Right.
the time the election rolls around,
Yeah.
it will be a gigantic issue, obviously.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's
hopefully
still an
that's
issue
not the
either way.
case.
It's an issue either way because Ruth Bader Ginsburg is not young, and
No.
she's the one that everybody was sort of looking at. Like
Mhm.
that's Democrats said almost. I actually heard some say like, hopefully she dies before Obama
Yeah.
is out of office because then we could put a replacement in.
Sorry, Ruth.
Yeah,
Wasn't you Ruth?
Yeah, right.
she's gonna live
All
to
right,
150.
and we're gonna roll on to another topic. So we had this controversy over what we thought would be the simple topic.
Yeah,
We should talk about the whole Department of Labor's issuing and
Yeah.
changing how they're going to view overtime. So, quick synopsis before we start a sideline conversation.
This is the second
viewer out
segment.
there.
Yeah.
Viewer out there. One of the other things that's happening right now in consideration is they're going to change how overtime is classified. It used to be that there was a ceiling of who could get overtime.
$26,500 or something along those lines.
There you go.
for salary. If you
For
were
salary. So you
exact.
made less than that, you qualified for overtime. No matter how many hours they worked you or didn't work, you were allowed to get it. You made over that, they figured, well, nope. The proposal now is that they're going to basically come pretty close to doubling that number.
Yeah, over 50,000.
It's going to $50,200.
$50,200. That means for all of you people out there that have a salary at your job and the manager comes to you and says, you got to work 48 hours this week. You go, that's cool, 40 plus 8 hours
Right,
overtime.
but regardless how you classify it, because it's
Right.
been abused
Under
so
the
much
limit,
that they
regardless
call
of how you classify
yeah,
it.
they call you a manager because you fill out a timesheet for the rest of
right.
the
Yep,
people you
doesn't
work
matter.
with or something silly like that, and then they don't have to pay you overtime, and that's all out the window.
So a
And
lot
now
of you are going to get a
white-collar
salary of
workers, too.
$50,260 probably in your near future, and then they'll put you back on the grind.
But
right?
they're
Yeah.
also changing some of the way those regulations work. So we can
Okay.
talk about that kind of as we kind of go forward a little bit. But
Gotcha.
it'll
Well,
be
that's
my
what I was.
Democrat
That's
side
what I was
coming
sort of
up
gonna
a little
say.
bit,
This is 100% something that has to be on your radar. Like
Yeah.
John,
Absolutely.
John was having a poor heart attack in the office next to me. But keep in mind that it's a proposed rule, and they won't. They are anticipating the final rule coming out in July, I believe, and it might not come out until. I mean, it's one of those things where who's gonna. I mean, they can wait forever, right? And nothing's gonna stop them.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on it, pay attention to it, but nothing's happened yet, and it's still all proposed.
The commentary section, the period is over. So
right, but they have to, before they issue final rules, they have to address every single comment that somebody posts.
They have to respond.
They have to respond to it in the final rules.
It's gonna come.
So it's, that's probably yeah. But my guess would be it comes out later this year and it starts in 2017. Mm-hmm. So keep an eye on it because they will.
Oh, it'll affect you. It could be a
huge
deal. Retail businesses, you're in trouble.
It's a big deal, but here, let's put a little bit into perspective here for everybody at home and here.
Well, no, I get it.
We run our businesses. We make profits. Everybody wants to control costs. That's important. The current level of exemption was set in 1963.
Well, what I'm getting to is, all amounts to at the end of the day, it just raises the prices, dude. That's all. Well, you're going to just raise the price.
That's a great point, but the fact of the matter is, the limit wasn't set in 1963 and was never inflation adjusted.
No, I'm
so
not
it's
saying
not like
it's
they
not
set the new limit at a crazy number. They literally took the number and inflation adjusted to current wage amounts.
I get that, but you have to look at industries, right? So, like I say, retail or fast food industry, things like that, where they have overtime built in, and those people, even with overtime, are making maybe $50,000, maybe. Mm-hmm. Now they'll go up to that baseline number, still get hit with the overtime, not see any benefit really from the law, right? They'll just be flatlined. Well, if the mechanisms aren't built in the price matrix to absorb that, now they're just going to pass that on. So ultimately, this is this is economics.
It's
this is economics, clean and
labor
simple.
Control and how you control your workforce.
No, it doesn't. So, if I need 150 man hours, I need 150 man hours. But unless I can go through with tech, right, and blow somebody out of a job. Like if I got 3 people working 50 hours a week, right, and I got 3 people working 50 hours a week at $29,000 a year. Now, and they did overtime for their 10 hours, but I didn't care. That's your salary. You're working your 50 hours. But the law changes. The law changes. So it was costing me 3 at $98,000. Now I'm 3 at $150,000.
So you go to 4 and you cut down.
Okay, right. So you go to 4 and you say, well, actually, why even bother that? I'm going to make 2 of you full time, and you're going to be charging 3 part-time people. Right? Congratulations. I just cut
because of healthcare too.
Right. So I cut my costs. Now here comes people that were making full-time wage. They were okay. They didn't ask for this disruption.
Right.
They're out. And this is a simple rule of economics that happens all the time whenever this is the minimum wage argument.
Well, what's gonna counter that is the availability of quality people to get the job done and the burden to take on new people or add to your roles and manage them because people are with a lower paying position, overall they have to support their family. They're going to be less loyal. They're going to be moving on.
Let's just talk about the unfairness in exempt employees. Okay, if you're a retail manager working in a store and you're forced to work 100 hours in a 2-week period, okay, if you're making $30,000 and you're working 100 hours in 2 years and you're considered the manager, you are earning less than the minimum wage. In people
you're missing
hired
the point. I'm not arguing the fact that something's got to change in that respect.
No, you're just saying what the effects are.
That's exactly right. I'm not arguing that.
Because people are going to change the way they try to game the system.
Well, and I think that's an important thing.
Change the rules. Changes how we play the game.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to wait until the rules come out because. For example, the meaningful use rules that came out in Medicare said if you're a doctor's office, you got to start using electronic health records. But they didn't say starting on January 1st, 2013, everything's got to be medical records. They did it over time. They understand you can't change everything immediately. There were exceptions for people who couldn't do it, and that's what this is going to be like. So.
No, I understand they may implement it over time. I get that. Right. But at the end of the day, just like healthcare has affected the wage compensation of people today, that will affect the wage compensation or price, where the system can be absorbed, the price can be passed on because there's room in the market. Like everyone's got to do it, and everyone's going to get affected by this law, then the prices of that stuff will just go up. In the cases where you can absorb it because there's a profit built in, it'll get absorbed, the other end of it is it will cause huge disruption to people with their livelihoods, and they will find themselves part-timed or out of work. That is, it's economics.
Well, but I guess what I'm saying is that the disruption may happen over time. They may spread it out
Well,
because they
there's-
know that at the Department of
Train wreck at
Transportation.
5 miles an hour, the train wreck at 100 miles an hour.
I'd rather be in
Well,
Well,
train
it's
Yeah,
gonna,
that's
it's
right.
gonna
Right.
affect your brick and mortar, your retail.
Not necessarily
Huge,
even a
and
train.
we've already got all
Yeah,
this
I
pressure
don't
from
think it's-
Amazon.
I think
Increased
you know, to
wages
compete,
mean
so-
increased spending. You can absorb price increases.
Eventually,
It takes time.
I think
You're
eventually.
talking about growing an economy in that case.
I would say
You raise
eventually.
prices.
Just,
Yeah,
just charge
absolutely.
more.
It's sort
I
of
don't
like-
think it just
Well,
works
it
that
doesn't
way.
work
Sure,
like
it
know,
does.
but
Okay,
here's
wait. Now, legal. 1 moment. He's kicking rocks over to some financial stuff. I'll get such straight. Because now you've got what the other fallacy of this is called the broken glass fallacy.
Right.
Here's a bag of rocks.
Yeah.
Go run out and break a bunch of windows, and now whoever placed those windows, you gave him a job, and you got to sell a window to fix that broken window. That's what, right?
Right.
That's the fallacy. Because that money that got spent for the broken window could have been kept, could have been invested, could have been whatever. So when I pay a distorted market rate pricing for stuff, right? Yes, eventually it just becomes the norm. But the question then becomes is what happened during that process and what other opportunities were lost where the money could have been properly spent that the government with brute force said and pushed it over here, right?
Right.
And that's
There's
the
another
that's the
economic
argument,
policy
right?
that says as inflation happens, wages rise, which didn't happen for the last 20 years, though.
No.
No, well, the part of that comes to the improper taxation policy, which just says taxes on our sheet, and that came with the fact that those who earned incomes in, particularly in the investment space, in the hedge fund space, which made
That's a whole
tons of billionaires,
story.
tons of billionaires,
Yeah.
they were able to get that money at a tax rate of not income but capital gains rate, and that stayed stationary. And so now they make $20 million in a year, and they only paid 15% instead of the 35% that they should have paid on their $20 million. So that's part of that problem.
I totally agree with that. I
This
mean,
is,
well,
all
that's
over,
kinda-
this is all way over my head. But one
different
thing I
issue.
said to
And it
James,
affects you as a business owner.
Well, let
lots
me
of
ask
ways.
you
Well,
this.
here's one thing I said to James earlier is I said, isn't it, and it wasn't exactly like this, but I just kind of feel like, and I'm not a numbers guy, isn't it going to get to the point where instead of just walking the line and doing, you're just going to hire full-time employees and pay them like full-time employees and
Sure.
give them benefits? Like, isn't that going to be easier than treading this line? I mean, I know companies are going to do it the other way, but
It's the competitive edge and the price point, and everybody
right.
is such a discerning consumer
That's
these
correct.
days. They're shopping. They go. I do it too. I go into Best Buy, look at all the neat products, and then I go out and check out the price on the internet, and I buy it.
well, let me say something
Sure.
about being
And
a
that's-
discerning consumer, right? When I'm a discerning consumer, I will pay more for businesses that treat people well.
Oh yeah, sure.
Like the B Corporation. I don't shop at
You're
Walmart.
such a
I don't
millennial.
shop at Walmart at all. I will not go in there, and I don't care how much cheaper Walmart is. I just don't care.
Well,
Oh,
you know,
well,
but
that's
the reality is that the public by and large is not like
No, but I
That's
think
correct.
millennials are going to be like that.
Yeah.
I don't think millennials will. I think it'll change.
I think-
the
I think
millennials
they'll
will do that when they can afford to do that.
That's
when they're
correct.
paid correctly.
That's correct. That's correct. When this wage law changes, the millennials will march with their value system right along and by it. But right now, I'll go do an H check in Walmart, and there's a lot of millennials in Walmart.
Yeah, Walmart's closing a lot of stores.
Oh, I know, because the internet's killing it. And that's what John kind of alluded to is
And the funny
Amazon
thing
is killing
Amazon
it.
is going to build brick and mortar stores. Now.
Yeah, that was last week or 2 weeks ago.
yeah.
That's right. Well, speaking of like booming businesses, there's another segment in our segment is bourbon, man.
Yeah.
Ah,
It's
hey.
here for the bourbon. It's like going crazy.
I
Yeah.
drink
Drinking
it here,
it-
but I'm
Yeah, and it's
actually
getting
drinking
watered down
Scotch,
now.
so-
Yeah, like coast to coast. And
Maybe you can explain the difference between bourbon and Scotch, James. That's important. People
Oh
don't know
yes,
that.
the difference between bourbon and Scotch.
Where-
Well,
we have someone just
all
walked
right,
off
there you
camera.
go.
It's okay. It's
I don't know
casual,
where
it's fine.
he and why he left
He's
in the
upset
middle
with
of
the
the
discussion of
show.
Scotch. He's only a bourbon
But
man.
right?
It has to do with the aging period. So I'm drinking 12-year. Bourbon's never aged more than 8.
Correct.
It's a different-
So and then go to the store if you want to buy a Macallan 64. I think that's like $1,600 a bottle or something like that.
I wouldn't be surprised.
So but you age something for 60 years, and
Pretty good.
it's good. Yeah, but they both are aged
alright.
kind of in
It's
oak
alright.
barrels. Both are aged out of similar stuff. Scotch is made in Scotland. Bourbon's made in Tennessee.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Well,
right?
bourbon,
is that,
Kentucky.
is that like a myth that it matters where it comes from? Because that's where
It
I
does.
always
I
thought
mean,
is that
so,
bourbon, Kentucky.
The
Scotch,
reason there are
Scotland.
so many different varieties of Scotch is because of the different water quality you get
That's
in the different areas
That's right.
of the country where they brew it. So there's certain types of scotches like Lagavulin you drink, and it's a lowland scotch, and they get that water from peat moss bogs, and it's really smoky and thick. And then
it's like
Highland
sticking your
Scotch,
mouth
which
in
is
like
doing
a campfire.
probably getting their water from mountain springs and things like that, and it ends up being much
Lightly
higher
refreshing.
note, sweet, and and then all the other after.
What's the bourbon that you had brought on board, James? The one that's
So the one that's
saltwater
fading,
aged.
yeah,
or
right. The
something?
one that's fading fast, right. So speaking of the different techniques, right? So you have bourbon, no more than 8 years, traditionally 3 years, so somewhere in between. And the ocean, which we have down there, which isn't surviving the battle very well, they actually loaded it up in the barrels, sent it out to sea for 5 years, floated on a huge barge in the middle of the ocean.
Was it
and came
submerged
back.
in salt water too, or something?
Nope, just sat out in the ocean air. So while it aged over the 5 years, all that saltwater air just kept bashing against the rock or the wood, right? So all the wood became saturated with saltwater air, and that's why the finish has a salty finish almost versus a normal
Very
bourbon.
nice, by the way.
Yeah, it's
Versus
good.
a normal bourbon, right? The normal bourbon doesn't have that kind of finish to it. And
Yeah, it's
needless
real
to say,
crisp, isn't it?
yeah, it's right, spot on.
So the reason I asked that question is I was hoping this is what was going to happen because people care about this stuff now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And they care about it with craft beer too.
Sure they
People
do.
care about it.
But it's
I
not
know
bourbon.
it's taken out. Well, no, I know, but I'm just saying.
I
like,
toured a craft
Okay.
brewery last week that brews all their beer in old oak wine barrels because all
There
they
you go.
do is sour Belgian ale.
Yeah.
Oh, right, there you go, right.
Wonderful, wonderful place.
And the real kicker, this business of bourbon shipments have gone up over $2 billion in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's a real American.
$2+ billion
I'd be
in
interested
exports.
to see if everybody in bourbon is doing well, or if some of the big boys, like I guess maybe who would the Budweiser and Bud
Well,
Light
all right,
be?
well, so all
Bud
right,
Jack
so
or
something
something?
no, Jim Beam.
Yeah,
Jim Beam was bought by the Japanese, right?
Yeah.
So a Japanese company bought Jim Beam out. This happened 2 years ago, and Jim Beam makes Maker's Mark, as well as Jim Beam, and then all the Jim Beam series, and
Yeah.
then they have Eckrol or some weird name one that's also part of their family line. And yeah, they bought them out because the Japanese were like, we want the best bourbon company there is. We're going to buy the world's best. I greatly disagree with them. But no one ever said
Maker's Mark
Americans
is pretty
can't.
good stuff, but
It is good, but it
I'll
isn't.
take one
so
for
here's my question though.
Yeah, but your preference, right?
Yeah.
Here's my question: what is this deal about the labeling of aged, or the age labeling on the bourbon, and they're not requiring it or something
There's
any longer,
actually-
so that now they can take and water down 12-year-old bourbon or something with 8-year-old bourbon? What
Sure.
who?
It's an FDA question.
Does
I would
anybody
think.
understand?
There's actually
what
a
that
question about, isn't there a law in Kentucky that governs how?
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Or is that
that's-
Tennessee? One of these states has a
You could
law
do it.
that actually gauges whether or not you can tell,
Yeah, you
label
could-
your whiskey as such. So
Yeah, I was gonna say I know that part of the what that got sparked by was because everybody and their cousin wanted Maker's Mark, so Maker's Mark couldn't meet their demand, so they said we want to produce it 1 year short of its bottle mark. So they said so we could catch up to our demand.
Right.
They did. Well, it became such a problem, sales almost stopped. So I don't care what they label. When you drink your brand of it,
Yeah.
you know if it changed,
For sure.
and you're gonna like, Psh, I fire you. You're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
there's
then
so
the
much
sales hit the
competition
skids.
now in the.
Well, that's right, and the
yeah.
sales hit the skids. So I wouldn't worry about whatever they're trying to market do, because at the end of the day, if you like bourbon, you drink what you like, and you know if it changes.
same thing
you
that
know.
happens with Scotch, right?
Yeah, same rules. Yeah,
If you
right.
go out and you have a hardcore Scotch drinker who has a blended Scotch, personally I like blended Scotch, but they will
Ooh,
be
man.
like, whoa, I don't want the blended Scotch.
Right,
Give me a
right.
single malt.
Right.
I can't take all those
Yeah.
different palate tastes through my mouth at the same time.
Yeah.
Right, right.
But you're also taking different years of Scotch and blending them together, and I love Johnny Walker.
So is
That's
Jim
just
Beam
me,
hurting
so.
then?
So Jim Beam, not now, as
Not
far as
now, they're
financially,
fine.
they're not hurting.
So all
but
the bourbon, because in beer, right? Budweiser, Bud Light, they're sort
Yeah.
of hurting.
Yeah, that's
theoretically,
right.
Right? Because
craft beer is
Craft
killing
beer.
them.
But is
huge.
that happening in bourbon too?
No, because it's harder to make it.
Okay.
That's
Takes longer to
ultimately
make
it.
it.
So
It takes
maybe in, like,
longer.
There's
20
a
years
craft.
it'll happen.
There's a craft distillery industry
That's
popping
absolutely
up,
right.
but-
Michigan's got one. You got the
absolutely.
two
Traverse
Jameses.
City and-
Yeah.
Two
they're good.
Jameses.
Two Jameses
Down in Ferndale.
Detroit,
Yep,
There you
Ferndale
go.
over there, and then you
making
got
vodkas.
yep. And then you've got the guys who do Dirty Bastard Founders.
Oh yeah.
They do their own bourbon. They have
And you
it's
have
not really
a
bourbon,
lot
it's
of
a
whiskey companies in Michigan popping up
Yep.
too. You have the Traverse City Whiskey Company.
Yep.
You know?
There's one in
The
Royal
thing
Oak,
about
isn't there,
whiskey,
right
though,
next to
is
Elm Brew
that
or something?
Because it takes so
think so.
long to actually
Maybe.
bring whiskey
Valentine's?
to the
Oh, that's in Ferndale.
market.
That's Valentine's. Those are two Jameses.
Okay.
Startup whiskey companies will actually get companies in Tennessee that have been making it for a while to start brew for them, and then they'll in-house label it and sell it until their batches can actually get ready for production. So
Yeah.
it's kind of an interesting.
That's
thing.
kind of weird.
Well,
You know,
some
it's
of
like,
them too.
try my great bourbon. Here's my
Yeah,
splash,
let's
but
see,
it's
if
really
you want to
good
open
bean,
up a
you know?
bourbon company and you want to sell premium 8-year-old
Yeah.
bourbon, you're gonna have 8 years of startup capital before you sell one bottle.
Yeah, I don't see that.
Well, so we were talking. So I was in Traverse City
Versus
a
a
couple
beer is
years
30
ago,
days.
right? And Traverse City Bourbon Company, I think that was who it was.
Yeah.
Actually, I shouldn't even say who it was because it may have been somebody else. But I was talking to them, and what they did is they did all kinds of spirits,
Yeah.
right? And then they just
Waiting
said,
for
"Oh,
the
we
bourbon."
don't have any bourbon yet because it's not ready." But they're
Yeah.
still selling vodka and
Absolutely,
gin, all
sure,
that
That's
yeah.
what they did
So
with
that's like,
Valentine's vodka by the two James.
right.
That's so you have Woodward Avenue whiskey or bourbon is actually now,
Right.
and they took them. They're just now releasing that.
Right.
That company's been in business for 5 years now.
Right, but you're
Which
still
makes
dealing
sense,
with
'cause they're
overhead
just-
making bourbon.
Well,
You're not-
absolutely,
you're
it
not
hasn't
running
changed.
sure.
You've got those
Still-
barrels sitting
you
up on
still
the
got-
shelf.
Yeah, you still
Absolutely
got-
right.
it's still
But the
tough.
beauty of it is, everybody's falling in love with it, good or bad.
Yeah.
Around the world, they can't drink enough of it in China and India, which is a win for us for shipping it. But at home, it makes it sparse.
One of the
Yeah.
article said that it went from $750 million worth of exports to $1.8 billion
2.9.
in exports, though, just
Yeah.
exports.
Yeah, it went up 1.8 billion.
Oh, okay.
It went up 1.8 billion.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. You know.
Yeah. It's a lot of bourbon. What was a bottle? 50
We should
bucks.
stock
Yeah.
up.
Do the math.
So what's
40
suffering?
bucks?
Is it Russian vodka or what? You know.
Well, and that's what
Are
happened.
people
right?
just drinking more?
Well, that's what happened. It was for a decade. Everything was vodka, and that's why now you've got like vodka that tastes like cherries and
Yeah.
grapefruits and
Got
cranberries and God knows everything under the sun. Because heaven forbid you have a
losing
straight
flavor.
vodka to vodka.
Okay.
So they had all these flavors, and then now you've got bourbon. They're starting to flavor bourbons, which anybody that takes bourbon serious, myself included,
Kind of weird.
would
isn't it?
We
be.
have a flavored bourbon underneath the table there, kind of.
I wouldn't call
It's got a salt
salt
it's got
water.
a salty
flavor.
flavor.
I like
That
flavored
isn't
bourbon.
cherry bourbon.
I guess I'm not
No, it's
serious.
not cherry.
I
It's
don't
not
think it's
blackberry
it's
bourbon.
No, you're right.
It's not
It's
like
not-
salted. It's
Right.
Yeah, right. It's just the process. Because you can see the beer barrel bourbons are the same, or
Yeah.
like Angel's Envy, which is in a port,
Yeah.
right? It's just, you could argue that. That's technique of the process of making it, and it really doesn't like say I mixed in some
Yeah,
Kool-Aid and
yeah.
change the flavor, right? So it's subtle. But anyway, bourbon, if you drink it, great time. And I like it because it is exploding with tons of options, and it doesn't seem to be ending, and the rest of the world loves it, which means it'll just keep on flowing.
If you got a lot of startup money and you can wait 8 years, it's a good time to start.
Right, that's it.
Hey,
As long as
Give
the
us a
trend
call.
stays
We'll
in
get
your
you
business.
started.
That's great.
I would love to be working for a bourbon company.
Yeah.
Here. You don't even have to pay me. Just give me a ticket to the door.
Careful now. Careful now. That's right. That's on record.
No, right. If this phone rings tomorrow, we'd like you to come and work at the distilleries here at Jack Daniels.
I'll be right there.
Yeah, right on. Well, our next segment that we cover is our shout-outs. Shout-outs to the good and the bad. And we call them hiss, whatever the case is.
Ooh,
So
that's
the
a
first
great rap.
thing is actually that there's an extension period now for filing your taxes. Just
woohoo!
in case you didn't
3
know.
days.
That's right.
It's a
3
weekend.
additional days. Well, part
Unless
of
you live
this-
in Massachusetts, because
Oh.
us Massachusetts people, we get an additional day as well. So
Wow.
we get
So you get to the 19th?
Patriots Day. That's right.
Oh, I see.
You always get Patriots
The
Day.
football team, is that what it's based on?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's-
exactly.
No.
I don't
It's like,
think that's
you know,
here's
probably
our
good.
gift to you for paying your
Yeah,
taxes.
I think something interesting here is you don't know. Federal holidays are weird sometimes.
Yep.
You don't know. With like President's Day was a
Right.
federal holiday. All
Yep.
the courts were closed. All this stuff.
Sure.
Yep.
Pay attention to it. Right.
Uh-huh.
Pay attention to it because it changes when things are due. It changes when you can. submit
I
taxes.
Well, isn't it the
it kills
post
me in
office
my
that's the
industry.
rule, right?
Okay,
Oh yeah.
every federal holiday is a banking holiday. So if it
Yep,
happens
that's
on
right.
a Tuesday or a Wednesday, that means you have to process your payments a day early, and it is not fun. So
Yep.
That's right. You got to rush to the door before the bank's closed.
And
early,
and
right?
telling
Yeah.
that client that's been not paying attention to your messages that their employees aren't going to get paid on Friday because they didn't follow the instructions.
Right.
Oh,
Boy.
Is kind of an issue, but
Yep.
That could
you
be
know.
like a riot in the streets.
yeah, well,
that's
it
fair.
could be. And then you tell them, well, okay, I can pay them on Friday, but only if you pay for a wire transfer.
Right.
Yeah.
So you gotta
Yeah.
pony up $50 or something.
Well, I mean, you actually have to pay the Federal Reserve to make a wire transfer.
yeah, you
so
sure do.
It's kind of a
Okay.
problem.
Yep,
Even
10
though
a.m.
in
and 2
Europe
p.m.
they make same day ACH payments all the time. So
Well, the fact
just
you
need
could do it
to-
the same day here.
well, no, we don't
Long
have
as
same day
before.
ACH payments in the United States.
Well, wire, I
They,
guess.
they take 24 hours to clear the amounts through the ACH system. They are going to change that though, hopefully soon. Hopefully next year they change those banking rules so
Be good.
we could do same day.
A
ACH
bank would
payments.
modernize. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it'd be nice if banks didn't hold large amounts of money on float for several days, just because.
Just
They
because,
can.
because they can.
Yeah.
Why not, right? It's not their money.
And now, did you guys catch the article about Target? What they've done for the chairs and
I
everything?
thought that's awesome.
Yeah.
For the carts?
I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
I think
You
it's
know.
awesome, not just because I don't have any developmentally disabled children, but my young kids.
Caroline's
They
Carts
like
is
to
what it's
sit
called.
in the cart all the time, and then there's like half amount of time, space, and I'd totally grab one of those Carolina carts.
Well, and
Make
so
my kids sit in the back.
I'd love to
So,
have her
just
as an
for the-
entrepreneur
for the-
client, though, because she's
Right.
a pretty smart woman.
Pretty
you
smart
know.
woman, yeah.
for the guys out there, just so you know, what happened is they're called Carolina carts. Target down in, I believe, South Carolina or North Carolina.
No, it's Caroline is the woman.
I know, but I thought it was in the
daughter.
South, where it started too.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's down south. But anyway, she designed these carts, a suggested design, for developmentally disabled children, where there's none of that front bar, none of the leg divider, because they move their legs and
Yeah.
bumble around, and it makes it easy so moms can just slide them in front or dads, and it's just a back support, and they walk them like an open walker would walk. Guys, check them out. It's a really cool idea. And it's
designed so that the child or adult child is facing them, but in a very comfortable situation,
Yeah.
in a cart that can move on a dime. You know what I mean?
And I
So they
think
can still
that-
maneuver, but they don't have to try and push a wheelchair and pull a cart at the same time. Is what she found herself having to do, and it was very difficult. But this allows her to. I think it could be a real boon for the companies that take this on.
Sure.
So
To me,
I see it going
what
forward.
it is to me is, the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed, and that requires you to make reasonable, changes to how you do it.
Sure.
And in the past, right, it either wouldn't happen, or you'd have to file a lawsuit under the Americans with Disabilities Act and all this stuff. But it's reached the point where Target, and I mean, they're being good guys. That's part of it. But they also said, you know what? If we
Good.
don't implement this,
Yeah.
we're going to get sued under the ADA. And the ADA has enough power now that people are doing it before it even becomes an issue, and I think that's great. I mean,
Well, it'll
whatever
probably
advisor
be
they're doing.
demanded going forward because now it's available.
Well,
but
it
they
will
didn't
set a
have
norm,
this
right?
before.
It's
Right,
better
so set a
to
new
do
norm.
it in advance than it is to do it when you're being
Right.
sued. Like
So
I think
now it's a
when they
prevention.
redid the University of Michigan Stadium, they were sued by the ADA to
Yeah.
actually put in wheelchair access. And after the lawsuit went through, they made it so crazy that they actually had to make every seat in the whole stadium just a slight bit wider because of the lawsuit. When
Yes, yeah.
you can't even get people with a wheelchair into those areas of that stadium.
No, but
It's
they paid the price for
Sure, they
being
should
on the
have
backside.
incorporated it in advance, so
Yeah.
they were, people were happy and didn't have to be sued.
Right.
But I don't want to make this a negative thing. I just want to
No,
give the
no,
Americans with Disabilities Act credit because people that
That's
fought
great,
through
it's
that, the
great.
people that worked on that, the people that sued on that, it's got teeth and people respond to it.
Well,
I think
and
that's great.
so, but beyond that, she did it without that impetus, and now in turn, Target's reaping the benefit
Yep.
for it by all the positive press.
Yeah.
Which goes back to you, the business owner at home. You could do the same with your business if it is something where you have a retail public that comes in and out. You could actually go out and actually start to get ahead and look for creative ways.
Become an early adopter.
And that's right.
Reap the benefits. of-
Absolutely.
Well, I don't want to get into
Like,
this
shows on YouTube with business
Yeah.
experts talking to you live,
Sure.
to answering questions if you tweet them to us at Ask the Biz Squad, or send them to us on our YouTube page, or on our Meetup page, or on Facebook, or LinkedIn, or anywhere else you
Or
find us.
just ask us.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Anywhere else you find us. So, I don't know if you caught the other thing on there about the whole alarm clock that
Oh yeah.
releases
Oh,
the
God.
coffee smell.
I actually have one of those in my house.
You do?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Called a coffee pot?
It's a coffee pot. Exactly. I wake up every morning and starts brewing at 6:30. I smoke fine coffee and I wake up.
Exactly.
I like it because I would
This is
really hate to
crazy.
be woke up by an alarm clock that smells like coffee because I want coffee.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not available.
But it's, the real solution is put a coffee pot in your room, right?
Yeah.
You've got to be able to smell the kitchen. That's
you
the
go.
way to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
But
Well,
some
they have
people
another
like
one.
bacon, right?
But
You
they-
wanna
but
wake
they
up
have a
to
bacon one.
You
Yeah.
can't
They
make
do,
Yeah, but
but
then you get up and there's no bacon to be
hungry.
had, but
You
you
gotta
smell
go
it.
eat.
Give you a break.
You gotta go
It's
eat.
bacon.
But they have a bacon one, which I thought was pretty funny. After I saw the coffee one, I was like, oh, well, I don't like either of those. I want like the smell of like some roasted pork.
5 cents.
Can I get like, you know, right,
on
some
that.
steak?
It's crazy.
Can I get the steak
She's
on?
got pancakes and cinnamon. And
Yeah,
all sorts
right,
of different
right,
things.
yeah,
All
there you
sorts
go.
of different things.
It's
Yeah, I
a
know, there's a bunch
luxury,
of
I
stuff.
guess, yeah.
So our next segment we talk about is the hisses, or like some of the things that are bugging us, if you will. And I don't know if you guys have read the latest blog post that I did, but there's 5 lies of Wall Street that they don't want you to know. I'm not going to go into them line by line, but I will pick one of them that is one of my biggest pet peeves of the 5, and that is the whole mutual fund non-disclosure in real time to changes of practice. And so what it is, folks, those of you that haven't already yet, the mutual fund industry is governed by some old rules, in the fact relative to the real market timing today. Real market timing today, a manager changes quickly and nimbly and adjusts the investments and does whatever. You buy, though, based on what your financial person told you to buy on, which they get that information based on their prospectus, which most don't read.
Yeah.
No one
Because it's full of legalese. Even as advisors, they don't read them. It's 45 to 50 pages. Ask your advisor, say, hey, did you read these prospectuses for all these investments you've recommended? And if they look at you and they say yes, take one out of their hand and go, can you please tell me? And start asking questions, because I can promise you they
Well, they're all
haven't.
the same too. So you can read one. You've read 40. You've read them all.
They're not all the same, because actually that's the problem.
Their makeup is
They're-
different. Yeah.
There's pieces throughout there. It's not
Right.
boilerplate. There's pieces relative to each product, and what happens is they change those so 18 months go by and they change
Yeah, that's-
that prospectus segment that changed in their policy to reflect whatever changed in their investment strategy. What's that mean to you? That means that you buy a mutual fund that's supposed to be a growth fund, and you wake up one day and you own a bunch of Freddie Mac bonds. You're not supposed to have Freddie Mac bonds in your mutual fund. American funds, I'm talking to you. You're not supposed to have those in your mutual fund that's a growth fund, but you did it anyway, and you didn't change your prospectus. So the number one growth fund in all the United States wakes up one day chock full of Freddie Mac bonds, and then the market falls apart. And then overnight, your fund took a 30% hit because those bonds become worth nothing. And your advisor goes, gosh, I didn't understand what the hell happened. Because the prospectus says that they wouldn't have those in there, but they have.
I just watched a movie the other day called, what was that movie called? Anyways, about the financial crisis. And at the end of the movie it says, and Wall Street banks started selling these, funny name things again, and essentially it's a CDL. I'm like, okay, cool, it's a credit default. They're selling them again.
Yeah, it's back out there.
Packaging up crappy mortgages and selling them as AAA rated bonds.
Yeah, it's the same program right back again.
So here's the
Really?
problem with that is that for me, I don't understand any of this. And there's 2 parts to it, right? One, you got to find somebody you can talk to about it that's knowledgeable, but you also have to be an educated enough consumer so that you can know whether the person, because everybody says they're trustworthy, but you got to know how to you got to know enough about this stuff to be able to say, like, all right, are you really educated? Are you really trying to screw me? Or what's going on?
Well, and I don't even think it's a malicious intent. I don't think the advisors are trying to
No,
stick
I
it
don't
to
think so,
somebody.
no.
I think it's just a question of they
It's a
themselves
divide-
don't
yeah,
know.
they don't know.
They don't
Right.
know because they're not being told.
Because they're not being asked questions by the consumer.
Well, no, the other end of it, so the industry works, for those you don't know, inside, behind the wall, the fourth wall, use a comic book term. On the other side of the fourth wall,
That's
right?
nice.
Yeah, that's right. Little Deadpool
Hey.
dig there. Love Deadpool. Go see
You
that
make
movie.
a little,
Don't take the
like,
kids though.
Make a
Love
bad,
movie.
like,
Don't
make
take
a
the
good,
kids.
like,
Don't take the kids.
obscene joke here somewhere in the mix.
If I can work it in, I'll figure it out. And
The kids aren't watching.
that's right. The kids are watching. Congratulations on becoming the next superstar capitalist, getting your education early. But one of the things is, I lost my whole tangent. Where was I going on this whole?
Behind the fourth
Thank you.
wall.
Yeah, behind the fourth wall. So what happens is, if you're the financial advisor person, you actually have these people called wholesalers. The wholesaler's job is to rep the product, like a manufacturing rep would rep it. So they'll come in and go, Ben, American funds have these great new funds out, and I think you should take them to your client. Here's all the risk numbers that you can look at for your client, so you can determine if this makes sense. Now, financial advisor A says, oh, well, these all fit clients A, B, Q. I can use this for probably 20% of my clients. I'll go talk to them. Hi, client. Hey, listen, I got these things I think would be a good fit for you. Look at these risk numbers. They look good, don't they? Fit for you.
Does that have a bunch of crappy default mortgages in them?
Oh, that's a great question. Hold on. Let me look at the prospectus, because you did ask that, and I don't want to get sued. Let me look at it. This is really boring. God, this was so painful. I got any drinks? Oh, okay, I got through it. You know what? Nothing.
Oh.
We're clean.
Okay, all right.
Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. 12 months go by. Hey, you know what? I was looking, the thing's down 20%.
Why?
You know, I have no idea. Hold on. Hey, wholesaler person, why is this thing down 20%? Well, the manager they changed their investment philosophy, and about 10 months ago, they actually decided to buy blah, 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 blah. Well, what do you mean? Why didn't you tell me? Well, I just found out about it. You did? Well, why didn't your company tell you? Well, because it was a material investment change, and by law, we're not required to tell you until at least 18 months when we go to put it in our prospectus. That's when we're required. Now, mind you, they can tell you before, but that's when they're required. So what happens to you as a mutual fund holder? The bus comes up, runs you down. That's why we tell people in this space, be very careful who you get your advice from. Be very thorough.
So here's what when I hear that, I think, I'm not even bothering. I'm just going to put my money in a savings account with nice easy interest. Why should I?
Easy interest.
Why should I do that?
There's no interest there, is there? Or
no, just like your regular base savings account, right?
It's like a negative event. You will lose. We call them certificates of depreciation. You buy a CD,
Inflation.
and it will actually lose money because of inflation.
No, I'm not even talking. I'm just saying I go to First National Bank and put my money in a savings account.
I know that. I'm
So
telling you.
to me, I don't even know.
But James is explaining that
But
because
it
of
doesn't-
inflation, you're actually losing buying power.
That's
because
correct.
That's what you're doing.
Not
Because it's
accruing
not
enough
even
interest.
keeping up with inflation.
It's not earning enough. So the bank's
that's-
got to make
that's
money,
good.
right?
It's like sticking your money, under the oak tree.
Right, but that's
kind
another
of
thing you got to explain to people. Because I would just as soon stick my money. When you're talking about that kind of stuff, I'm gonna stick my money under the oak tree.
Come to me. I got oak
Right?
trees.
So that's why.
No, but there's a
I
happy
know.
medium here. You don't have to be in that kind of a product. You can be in something that's still going to keep up with inflation, still make a reasonable return, reduce your risk or eliminate your risk altogether, and hopefully be a lot more transparent
It's
in
an
what's going
important
on.
thing, I
behind
think, because I
the
don't
curtain.
think people realize how much inflation can decrease.
Oh,
their value.
well,
Absolutely.
it destroy. All you got to live through the last 10 years.
Isn't that the
and-
most insidious
Wow.
tax there is, right?
Absolutely right. Because year over year it happens in an invisible manner, right?
Yeah.
So year over year. Matter of fact, you guys want to get an idea of how the whole banking system works and how it really is behind the scenes. There's some guys that did an animation on YouTube, and it's called The American Dream. Go look it up. It will give you a step-by-step, play-by-play, in a little tongue-in-cheek style of how it really goes down and how the banking
Very
system.
entertaining.
That's right.
That's a good one.
And
But
it's
it'll
how
make you cry.
But that's
You
right.
know?
Yeah, of course.
and it explains how the bank makes their money not on your deposit.
Right.
It
No,
makes your money on
yeah.
the fractional reserve lending
Right.
that it does, right?
Right.
Takes $1, turns it into 9 that it can lend out, keeps 10 cents in the bucket, that kind of thing. And that's a whole other beast. I'm working about just Wall Street, let alone the bank system. And in Wall Street, there's stuff that they could do to protect the consumer, and it's not going to come by. The law has to do it because the law wasn't. Because the law says already, it's the consumer has to get educated by people that are willing to break the fourth wall.
Sure.
Okay.
And
That
tell the
should be our,
secrets.
that should be our word of the week.
That should be like
Yeah, I
break
don't
the
know
fourth
how
wall.
they work Yeti in there.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
right.
Yeah.
Go-
That's
there
how you
go.
work
Yeti.
Yeti in there, right?
Yeti too. Yep. And so that's one of the things that I personally have such a big pet peeve about.
But to be honest with you,
Yeah.
legal regulation does change the way how transparent they are with consumers as well.
Not on
No,
Wall Street.
No, because you know what?
I'm looking at Wall Street.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
Wall
a tax guy, right? So
Yeah, sure.
I know that they never would report your basis on stock sales until they were required to report your basis on stock sales. And tax wise, as far as the IRS figuring, your average individual investor who sells stock and makes a huge gain in a year has absolutely no clue what he paid for that trade, and without it being reported by a financial advisor, I'm not going to know how to report it properly.
Here's a problem.
That change came about because of regulation.
I get it, but
here's the problem.
Oh.
You can give somebody a notice of something.
Right.
That doesn't mean actually read and understand it.
That's
right? People give out, for HIPAA as an example, you give out a notice of privacy practices, you got to sign and acknowledge you read it. Nobody reads it.
Nobody receives perspective, but they signed that they received it.
But it doesn't actually,
no one reads the Apple agreements either at the iTunes store. That's why they made the South Park about,
Exactly.
What I was going to say is the market does innovate around. So right now, in the mutual fund industry, there's been a mass sellout. They're leaving. The consumer is leaving, and they're buying ETFs. ETFs don't have the problem that the mutual funds do, because ETF trades like a stock. It's a daily, real-time value. So you as a consumer can get in and out. It talks about the whole day trading thing. That's a whole nother segment. One of my pet peeves, too, with Wall Street and the lies they tell you, the fact that you can't execute as a real trader, regardless of what they tell you. But there are 3 levels of trading, people. I don't care what they say. Even your guy sitting in their office that you go see, your girl, whoever, they do not execute your trade as a level 1 trader. They're not a market maker. And your advisor probably not even aware of market makers unless they just got their license or they're a nerd like me. But excluding that segment, nobody else even follows the whole market maker part. So you have a market maker, and that's a level 1 trader. And as a level 1 trader, you have immediate access to the market. Everybody else takes a line behind them. And it's a delay. That means you say, I want to sell now, but you may have to wait 30 seconds or up to 2 minutes before your trade's even looked at.
Which is a long time.
Which is a long time, but everyone's trying to get out the door, and you want to sell your thing. So that's why trading's not for the average person either.
Let me just break this down, too.
Sure.
The other thing you said, right, is my instinct, this is all a huge mess, but it's riskier to not do it. I mean, you've got to get involved in this somehow. Because if you just keep your money in an oak tree, you lose money because
you have to have an appropriately diversified financial plan that includes multiple levels of risk and return.
Yeah, and you got to
that
know
you're
what
comfortable
that means,
with,
and you got to understand all that.
And you
need somebody that you
consult with
trust.
A financial advisor to do.
Develop a relationship.
You need it. You can't just because I think millennials sometimes think that they can just trade it online and keep it themselves and all that, and I don't think that's gonna work.
So we're going to wrap on that piece.
And
we'll move on. Any questions from the field? So this segment is where we deal with some customer questions, things that have come up over this last week that people may have. And then can we go about we talk about those and anything. So anything this week? Do you guys have some of your clients you've sat with? Questions have come up you think maybe should be addressed? Or
yeah, I had a client. I had a client's vendor call me earlier this week that they were getting their taxes done by a preparer, and they were upset that the 1099 we issued to them was under the wrong name. Now, what I'll tell everybody on the street who owns a business is, unless you're a C Corp, you have to provide your clients with a W-9 that says what your EIN is, and what your legal business name is, and what your DBA is, and what your address is. And that's so we, as businesses, can issue you a 1099 at the end of the year to report your income. Now, if you don't update those things when your legal business name changes, I don't know to issue your 1099 to the appropriate name. So my response back to the individual was, here's a copy of your W-9. If your legal business name has changed, please fill out a new W-9, and I will reissue your 1099 appropriately under that name.
Easy peasy.
The reality, make sure you're updating these things. Most business owners don't do them.
No.
Especially if your legal business name has changed.
Yeah.
Well, there penalties, right? I mean,
we talked about that a couple weeks ago, I think. I mean, the penalties for not submitting a W-9, I think it's a really... That's really what James talked about as the penalty, is that people don't do the names right because it's so behind. And that 1099 reporting is not... the IRS is behind on it, they said. And so the penalty is just people don't know your name, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to send it out to them so that you get your W-2s right. You file your taxes by April 18th, right?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, I know one of the ones we had this week for us was it was a whole financial aspect of they were pulling money from their retirement funds to subsidize their current expenses today because they couldn't get past their situation to say, okay, I've got to make adjustments because stuff changes. And so people that, how to put it, it's like you've got to reassess your personal financial situation all the time. And you got to be okay with the fact that I may have to make a short-term sacrifice, sell my house, downsize, whatever, for a period of time of 2 years, 5 years, whatever, and then get back in the game and go back up in size of house if need be. Or you might find that you like the smaller house or whatever the case is.
Careful about burning your IRA assets.
But that's it, because that's it. Because when that's gone, that's it. You don't get back time. And it takes time for money to become more money. It's not any other way. And when you burn that asset, it's gone. And now you're in trouble at the age of 65. And you're hoping to get overtime at Walmart. And that's not what you want to be. So one of the things this week when we sat down was we talked about the importance of taking and changing one's perspective and considering all the avenues you can to do that. Taking everything you can and take it from a full 40,000 foot look. Don't try to judge things as just separate pieces, because then you're missing efficiencies, right? So, yeah, that was this week. That was a thing that came up for us too. So, we always like to have a segment on a cocktail of the week.
Yeah.
So this week's not a cocktail. In honor of President's Day, it is the first president's beer, George Washington's beer. So there are some actual brewers out there that are making George Washington's beer, and there's recipes online. You can go look it up. And not that we've had any of it here to sample, so we can't speak to it personally. But from what we read, it was considered dry and kind of blah.
To be fair, it's based on a journal entry that he wrote that says the temperature should be as warm as blood.
Okay.
Right? I mean, uses stuff like that, right? It's like he doesn't say 100 degrees. He said you got to warm it. It's a pretty
sweet.
bare bones recipe. So,
Okay.
but they're
Marco
working on it
approved.
and they're trying to get it up there. Well, so George says.
Well, it sounds good. I mean, until you guys said that, I was like,
Well, that's the whole.
When
when you
That's the
said
whole
warm
point.
as blood, I said, maybe
Somebody's
not.
trying to get it drinkable enough that people will say, "Oh, George Washington's recipe, I'm going to buy that."
But
Right,
that's
Keep an eye on it.
And that's capitalism at work, and that's why we love America.
But try one before you buy a 24 pack.
Yeah.
Great if you can find it.
Yeah.
And if any of you do know where you can find it, put it online. Let us know.
Sure.
We're equally as curious
Brew
to
your
find
own,
out
you
ourselves.
can do that,
Well, that's right. Or brew your own. But now, usually the last segment is where we have actually a tip of the week. So, John, what do you want to send people away with this week?
If you happen to be a small business employer that had less than 25 employees with an average income of less than $50,000 and had your group health insurance via the exchange, then you, with the shop market, you are entitled to potentially a tax credit up to 50% of the premium portion that you paid for your health care
Bonus
plan, and it can go back to 2 years for you. So, it's money on the table. If you happen to be one of those that played the game that way, there's opportunity.
So call
for
us,
you.
right?
Yeah.
And we'll
Yeah,
Contact
absolutely.
your
We'll
tax
get you.
professional and we'll
Call
file
us
some
or
amended
talk
returns
to
for
your
you.
tax professional.
We have one too.
We have a
Squad.
tax professional. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
so-
right, Dave, right? So,
Yeah.
All right.
I didn't say. I said talk to our tax professional.
I missed that part. I'm with you.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. Talk to our guy first.
Oh, I heard call us, but okay.
Ours first, because we're
Yeah.
better.
I can tell you about it, and he can make sure it happens. So.
That's right. Exactly right. Ben, what's your takeaway?
So my biggest thing is check the sources of whatever you're looking at. Sort of, when we were doing background research on this, with the new Department of Labor regulations, one of the articles we read said that it's happening. It's 100%. This is how it is, and that's not true. It's just not true. If you read an article that says the law is changing to this, and they don't cite to where the law, I mean, maybe you can't go to the point and check it, but I see things on the internet all the time that misrepresents the way
No.
regulations are, they misrepresent
It's
laws
not
are.
true.
Really?
For
You
example,
mean
let me tell you another thing, right? So I just saw this going on that the Michigan passed a law banning, gay,
Oh yeah. That's
relations. Not true at all,
great. That's a
right?
great law.
There's a law that has been in place banning it for 100 years, and they passed an amendment amending other things relating to it, but they didn't bother getting into that because they didn't want to make a huge political argument. So it just left it as is. So it's totally different than what these news
And
posts
unconstitutional, by the
said.
way. Yeah.
Right, and it's
Is it safe to say that you can't trust everything you see and hear on the internet?
Right, but if you don't see the little the good websites will have the source to the Federal Register or to the law, and then
Yeah.
you go and read it. And if they have the source, you can rely on it, right? But if you're reading an article that doesn't have footnotes, I wouldn't trust it. So check if they
or
don't
a
list
blog,
it.
or
If they don't
that's
list
a good
their
point,
sources,
you know,
if they don't
because
list sources, don't trust it.
yeah, because people go to the internet for reference, right?
Yeah.
But there's as much disinformation out there as there is accurate
Yeah,
information. So.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You got to be careful about that disinformation.
I would agree with that. So my financial tip of the week or your walkaway would definitely be for you to sit down, don't wait for the bus to hit you, and put your pencil to paper or your keyboard to your screen or something, and get to it and actually crunch the numbers and sit down with me or somebody else and make sure your situation's in alignment. It's the beginning of the year. We're still in February, technically, still the beginning of the year. And sit down and do that. And they should be doing that on a regular basis so that you're sure that you're actually doing the smartest things that you can do with your financial situation, because there's always things that you don't know that affect it because it's not in your space to follow it all the time.
Right.
And, there's stuff that changes constantly.
Stuff that you don't know that you know you don't, or you don't know that you don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it. That's it. And you, Mr. Lippens?
Well, outside of the W-9 thing that we talked about kind of already, I would say, if you're an employer out there and you're still issuing checks to your employees, I would push you to consider electronic payments and direct deposit. It's going to help your cash flow immensely. You're going to know, exactly what's coming out of your bank account when, and it's really not that hard to manage. Many people don't.
Do you know someone that could help with that?
I can definitely help with that. I'm not going to say it's just me, but we do a great job of helping our employees with
Isn't it a lot
solutions.
easier to manage in the long run?
Well, some people would say that, if you have a high rates of turnover dealing with getting banking information from their employees and changes in bank accounts, and employees that might have, negative amounts in their account can be a little difficult. But
Our
the reality is it's the same difficult that you're dealing with.
Can employers force people to get paid via EFT? I know that
Employers can force employees to get electronic payments. They need to offer them multiple solutions of payments. So you can say to your employees, we don't offer checks, but you need to be able to offer them direct deposit as well as this new funny feature called a pay card. So it's basically a prepaid Visa card. And if you're doing that in the state of Michigan, then you can force electronic payment. If you're not doing both, then you have to offer your employees checks.
Okay.
Wow.
I got it.
But
So they got three options.
yeah,
Good.
they really kind of there's three options of payment system, but
They can't just show up on Friday and get cash.
I guess.
Well,
you
they
could do
can,
that
but
too.
that's not in the. That's under the table. Isn't that under the table?
No, it doesn't have to be under the table. It doesn't
Well,
have to be
sounds
under the
like,
table.
Like anything else, when it first comes out, it's buggy.
Right.
But it's like electronic health records. It's a mess when you first got into it. But eventually, it's going to get to the point where it makes everything so much easier.
No, it's
And I'm
not
sure there are
buggy at
people
all.
that
And
said-
going forward within
Right.
the next 12 to 24 months, when we have same day ACH processing, it'll be a situation where you could report your payroll on a Thursday afternoon and have everybody's money in
Friday
their bank
morning.
account by Friday morning.
Got it.
So people that looked at
Nice.
electronic checks and said, "Nah, too complicated," however many years ago, look at it again, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's way more efficient, and like I said, you don't have to deal with the point of someone losing their check, finding it 90 days later, and taking it to the bank and cashing it. Because to be honest with you, your cash flow is probably all messed up at that point.
Oh, yeah.
So.
It's crazy.
Gentlemen, thank you for coming by, and you, the viewer, thanks for stopping
Thanks,
in.
guys.
Now, if you liked what you saw today, subscribe. Really, we need subscribers because we love subscribers. We love the random viewer, but we really love subscribers. So, feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube.
It's free.
It's free.
It's free, yeah.
We like free.
Yeah.
Free's good.
Free is good. And you just got to click the button. It's over somewhere
It's down here. Or,
There,
no, down
there,
here.
right down. You just click the button and become a subscriber, and you'll become one of our most favorite people on YouTube. So thanks for watching, and